Welcome back to the Morning Brew, guys, and joining me on set is Mr. Gerry Brooks, chairman of the NGC, and we're discussing recent developments, CNC Shutdown. He's here to discuss the details of the arrangement, the contractual arrangements, etc. Mr. Brooks, before we took the last break, we were talking about resetting the architecture and policies and, you know, charting ways forward, modifying agreements and offers, etc. But I want to ask you a question here, Mr. Brooks. In light of the increase in gas prices, how will the low cost of gas in the U.S. impact local markets here?
The low cost of gas in the U.S., the global market is connected, and there are several different markets. The U.S. has now become a net exporter of gas, and you also have the opening up of the Panama Canal, which allows cargoes to move from the U.S., but which also allows opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago. What the low cost of gas has done is that it has inspired additional plants in the ammonia space. So you have 3 new plants coming on, which has increased supply. And so that has affected the supply-demand balance. What we in Trinidad have to do is that we have to do a number of things. Remember when our board came in, there was not gas supply certainty. So we have to ensure that we provide gas supply certainty, and I've talked about the Venezuela initiative with the Prime Minister, which is important, which provides additional gas. You have the marginal fields, which is coming on. We have one coming on in 2018, which provides additional gas. That is work that the NGC is doing along with the government to create more gas supply certainty. And the second thing that we've got to take a look at is our gas pricing. And we will be in a better position to take a look at gas pricing in the 2023 period and beyond. And now that we've at least brought some certainty to our current situation, to cause that to be affected in negotiations that are ongoing with additional upstreamers. I don't want to name them publicly. Just a correction, I will not be able to reveal details of the contract negotiations because that is subject to strict confidentiality, and it is also subject to, I have to be mindful of the fact that the matter is still sub judice. What companies locally also have to do as well, which is downstream companies, and what we at the NGC have done, is all of us have to become far more efficient in our conversion of gas to end product, whether it's ammonia or methanol. From an NGC perspective, we have taken $275 million of costs out of our business. We have tried to be far more efficient. Companies downstream will also have to be far more efficient, but companies downstream also will have to recalibrate their expectations as a shareholder. The very high returns that you were earning in the 2013 to 2014 period, when commodities were extremely high, ammonia, methanol, in the 600-700 range, now that you have increased supply coming onto the market as a consequence of cheaper gas in the US, those expectations have to be moderated, and that is precisely what we're saying. Parties have to moderate their expectations, and we at the NGC have certainly moderated ours in a way that allows both parties to survive this period. The industry has gone through this before, it will go through it again, and I think if we cooperate, if we work constructively, which the NGC is prepared to do, I think we can chart a way forward.
Cheaper gas in the US, Mr. Brooks, do you foresee other companies packing up their shop and taking business away?
The circumstances which have led that, I will not be naive, and none of us should be naive, and we must be alive to that possibility. It is not an easy thing to take up your plant and go. There's one precedent I know of in Chile where there was absolutely no gas. This is a very different circumstance in Trinidad and Tobago. It is quite costly to move a plant. You are going to be out of market, and it also calls for substantial investment in new plant. All of our plants in Trinidad and Tobago are literally fully depreciated, having been put in place 20 years ago in the 1998-1999 period. Those plants were supported by the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago with relatively cheap gas prices, and NGC taking on substantial risk. So that our plants in Trinidad and Tobago are at an advantage in terms of cost, in terms of having been fully paid off for, and in terms of full depreciation with established markets.
Mr. Brooks, what is the NGC going to do when other contracts come up for review and possibility renewal?
Well, it is not a question of what is the NGC going to do. It is a question of what is the NGC doing. Okay. And from a policy perspective, we are doing a number of things. One is that we are sitting down maturely and constructively with companies, many of whom understand the current position and whose this position is quite different. And with those companies, we are working constructively to try to conclude the agreements. every contract that the NGC has, it will honor, and it will honor in a manner that is professional and which fulfills the obligations of the contract. And we have done that in every case. For contracts which are expiring, what we cannot do is to renew those contracts in terms and on a basis which is inconsistent with the current local and international reality.
Are you concerned about the message that is being sent to potential investors, Mr. Brooks?
We are very careful about the message that we send to international investors. Just yesterday, the National Energy and ourselves were speaking to potential investors who continue to find Trinidad and Tobago an attractive destination. It's attractive because of its geopolitical position. It is attractive because we have a well-built industry. It is attractive because we have a strong energy services regime. You have Demas, Tucker, Tufco. In fact, we're going to Mexico over the weekend to try to attract more business and more local content to Trinidad and Tobago. So we have good policy, which we are trying to modify to ensure that we continue to be attractive. So we are very concerned, we are very careful, and companies are very mature. It's a complex environment, but I think companies understand what is happening, and Trinidad and Tobago continues to be an attractive destination.
Now, Mr. Brooks, correct me if I'm wrong here, but CNC, is it not owned by 3 multinational companies?
It is owned by 3 multinational companies. 2
of which include EOG Industries and Koch Industries. Koch Industries, based in the US, right? Now, is the NGC willing to, I guess, basically have a showdown with these 2 major energy players?
We are not interested in the showdown. That is not the approach of the National Gas Company. Our approach as a board and as a management is to very carefully do the research on international market conditions, both from a gas perspective and from a downstream perspective, to try to find value and opportunity for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And so we went out looking internationally at sources of gas supply. We went out internationally to find opportunities in Ghana, Mozambique, Tanzania, that's developing. We are looking very carefully at renewables, and in fact we have 2 renewables projects. The ministry has an expressions of interest project out right now, and those renewables will help us to redirect some of our scarce molecules of gas to be able to provide those to the petchem sector. So our approach is a very studied, very constructive, very deliberate approach. We are not interested in a showdown. What we are interested in is ensuring that we find an arrangement from a policy perspective and from a company perspective that allows all to navigate this period and to continue to grow and to develop. What we will not do is to put at risk thousands of jobs in Trinidad and Tobago because we have struck a bad deal in the name of signing a deal.
Mr. Brooks, at the recently concluded energy conference, the energy minister cited that Atlantic LNG, the country was losing approximately $6 billion from Atlantic LNG from what he termed as manipulated contracts. Is this something that the NGC is aware of and affected by as well?
We are a 10% shareholder in Train 1 and a 10% shareholder in Train 4. We have seen our dividends diminish as a consequence of reduction in prices, but we also share the concern of the minister. If one takes a look at the ranking of Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the return that we get for our gas resources, we rank in the lowest quarter%, in the lowest quarter. Many countries, for the same proportionate value of molecules, are earning significantly more. So there are deep and profound issues around transfer pricing. There are deep and profound issues around the value that Trinidad and Tobago is getting. And if you take a look at the returns to Trinidad and Tobago, where we were earning $20+ billion in 2014, and even if one extracts out the pricing differential, we are now earning $2 to $3 billion. And therefore, the government, I think, I cannot speak for the government, but certainly on the board of the NGC and the management of the NGC, we believe that there has to be a very careful look and recalibration of the transfer pricing to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago gets its value. And when we talk about the recalibration of the architecture and the resetting of the industry, the only way the country is going to move forward is if we look very carefully at each contractual arrangement and from a policy perspective ensure that we're competitive, but also ensure that this energy resource, which is critical to Trinidad and Tobago's future, is able to provide the value to our citizenry.
That's it, guys. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we get the closing comments from Mr. Gerry Brooks, Chairman of the NGC. Stay with us.